I start today with a question about Ayn Rand's mental process. How was she able to depict so convincingly the inner life of evil people, such as Jim Taggart? How was she able to understand the mental state of the chronically out of focus and evasive? In a sense, of course, everyone can only know what they personally have experienced in the broad sense. If you had never experienced a certain category of emotion, just like of a certain category of color, you could not project it just out of a void. But what you can do, if you have any element of a certain category, is abstract and from its distinct surroundings, and then imagine it in different quantity, in different contexts. You can project what a person would be if that quality, as you experience it, became dominant. Now, take as an example first, could Ayn Rand depict a character who was neurotically anxious? In other words, anxious and fearful all the time that something awful would happen, but without any basis. That's a neurotic anxiety. Yes, she certainly could, not because she experienced it, but because she has experienced anxiety. For instance, if her husband is out and he's not back when expected, and that's untypical of him, she experiences anxiety. So if she knows that emotion, all she has to do as a thinker is ignore the fact of its cause and project it as being continual or metaphysical. And then she is able to grasp without any problem and write about. Now, if she were concrete bound, then if she didn't experience specifically neurotic anxiety, she couldn't. But anyone who, with the conceptual capacity, can imagine a quality changed in degree, in context, with a different causal situation, and can easily depict it. Now, one of the questions is, how about a person being chronically evasive? Well, of course, chronically is just a projection of any time a person is evasive or wants something above reality. And everyone, Ayn Rand and her heroes included, know that such a situation, have experienced such a situation, and know that the power of consciousness includes the potentiality of not looking at reality. Now, an example, for instance, in real life, not in real life, but in Atlas, was John Galt, for a moment, dropping the context and focusing on what he wanted as represented by Reardon as against reality. Now, he didn't give in to that, but he certainly had the temptation for a moment to give into it, and that is enough for Galt to be able to grasp what it would be like if one succumbed to that kind of temptation. Now, did Ayn Rand ever have that? Well, on certain minor things, yes, she did. For instance, she did not like to get her hair done or to discuss legal contracts. And in many cases, she would be tempted not to do it or to say, I'll do it tomorrow. But she would then, having got that temptation, realize, if it were so in a given situation, that this is reality. She has to do it. She's appearing on TV or whatever. So she would then resist that temptation. Everyone who has free will knows that inherent in choosing to think, a certain effort is required, and that it's possible not to exert that effort and even to look away from the requirement for that effort. That doesn't mean you ever have to do something immoral to grasp the possibility. Now, for example, Ayn Rand is a staunch advocate of benevolent universe. She does not believe that man is doomed to failure. And yet she projected very realistically the character Dominique in The Fountainhead, who was very bitter and believed that values can't succeed in this world. Well, where did she get such a possibility? And her answer was, Dominique is myself in a bad mood. In other words, in a bad mood, she has an indication of the feeling it's hopeless. She doesn't believe it, but it comes to her because in that context, only the negatives become real. She doesn't act on it or write that way, but she has that experience. And just having that mood is enough for her to project a whole human being motivated by that mood. So how all these negatives are capable of being experienced in some form, in some moral form, by anybody, including a perfectly moral person. More broadly, a writer of any intelligence and abstract capacity can project the most huge development that he has never experienced from a very small beginning. And the perfect example here is Tolstoy. Leo Tolstoy, the Russian author, was asked, you've never been in a war, you've never seen the French and the Russians in the battlefield. How could you possibly convey so eloquently in War and Peace this gigantic thing of which you have no knowledge? And Tolstoy gave a perfect answer. He said, I saw a street fight once. That's all he needed to project the Napoleonic Wars.